Hello, and thank you everyone for being with us today. My name is Merle Massie. I'm the coordinator of the Undergraduate Research Initiative here at the University of Saskatchewan, and I want to give you guys a bit of an overview of the NSERC USRAs, what they are, and how the process is going to look here at the University of Saskatchewan for 2023. See if my clicker will work. There we go. As we gather here today, we acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis, and we pay our respect to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. You'll see I have a second one. It's a little bit longer. It's the one that you'll find on my email signature if ever you send me an email. I developed this, my personal land acknowledgement that I developed with the Guanama Center for Teaching and Learning. If ever you get a chance to do that, I highly recommend the process. So I'm going to tell you what we're kind of going to go over today. I like to start to make sure that everybody is on the same page, but what is NSERC? Hi, Amy. What is a USRA? And then the mechanics. So I'll go through our changes for 2023, the application procedures, our timelines, proposed adjudication timelines, and some special notice for NSERC USRAs for students who come from Indigenous background or Black ancestry. And absolutely, someone wants to do the transcript, so I'm going to enable that as well. And then I'll open it up for any questions. So I like to start here. What is NSERC? Because not everybody knows. Those of us who live and swim in the research side of the university, we just assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. Canada has three what we call tri-agencies. This is where the federal government puts their money where researchers across Canada can apply, and it's in three baskets. So the Canadian Institute for Health Research, so anyone who does health-related research, that tends to be where they apply. SSHRC is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So me as a historian, that's where I apply. For example, English professors, arts, education tend to apply to SSHRC. Natural Sciences and Engineering Council, it is the largest of the three. We shorten it up, we call it NSERC, and that is the council that we're going to be talking about today. Of the three, NSERC has the only, although that might be changing, the only specific undergraduate research award. And so it's for students who are in natural sciences and engineering. If ever you go looking, so NSERC has a very huge federal website, of course, and you can kind of get an idea of how NSERC changes through the years, and they do. They'll outline different priorities, different areas of research where they want to put their funding, and different professors across campus will apply to NSERC for funding to run their labs here on campus. So what is the USRA? It is the Undergraduate Student Research Award, USRA. If you come from other universities, we say it USRA, we say each word. Others will say USRA, and I always have to figure out what they're talking about because, you know, how we say things is different from university to university. They are held by a professor, which means that it's part of the professor's research funds. So the money comes from NSERC and it comes here to the university. It's held by a professor for a specific student. So a professor needs to have the student and the supervisor must apply together. You must be already matched. So you need to have already had a conversation with a professor here at the university, and the two of you together craft your application and put it forward to NSERC. So we've had a lot of student and faculty matching sessions throughout the fall. We've had a lot of sessions where we try and help you to go out on your own and find a supervisor and to kind of give you some of the skills and some of the confidence to go ahead and do that. And so if you've missed any of those sessions or if you'd like to watch those videos, they're on our YouTube channel. So the way that we run it here at USask is that you work with a faculty supervisor on a project. And we only run the NSERC USRA program at USask in the summer, so 16 weeks during the summer. NSERC, it's all about developing your potential as a researcher. Now, you don't necessarily have to become a faculty member to be a researcher. There's natural sciences, the National Science Council, the Saskatchewan Research Council. There are lots of other places where you can be a scientist and a researcher, lots in agriculture as well. So you don't necessarily have to become a faculty member, but they do kind of encourage undergraduate students who take up a USRA to consider undertaking graduate studies in those fields. And so it's not meant to be a full-on pipeline, but kind of just to sort of train you and mentor you along the way, should you be considering graduate studies. The amount is $6,000 from NSERC. The rest of the funding comes from your faculty supervisor, which is why you have to have your supervisor in place, because they have to say, yes, I have the funding to make this into a full-time position for the summer. When you apply, and I'll go through this in a bit, so there is a specific spot in the NSERC website just for the USRAs, for the Undergraduate Student Research Awards. There's an online system login. You have to create your profile, and you fill out the forms and you upload them and all of these sorts of things. This is where I go. This is where all my guidelines. I'm the liaison officer and the master liaison officer for the University of Saskatchewan. So I try and answer questions as best as I can. Last year, this is what happened for our NSERC USRAs. We received 60 NSERC USRA awards from NSERC. Plus, we also put forward 5 Indigenous students who also had USRAs. That was the highest number of Indigenous students that we've ever put forward, but I would like to beat that this year, please and thank you. We had about 125 USask applications, so it's about 1 in 2, about a 50% rate. Depending on the year before, we had 145 applications for 63 positions. So it was there were a higher number of applicants, and so that sort of the success rate is sort of between that 35 to 50%, just depending on how many applications we get. We at USask, we do them centrally. Other universities have their own processes, but at USask, we do them centrally, and so they all get rolled up together, and there's a USask committee, and I will tell you who's on that committee. They evaluate those awards, and they read all of those applications, and they evaluate. Every application is evaluated by 2 USask faculty members who are NSERC eligible researchers. If you happen to fall at the top of the list, and in that first 60 to 63 or whatever, we will send you a letter to say, yay, you won an award, and you have to actually accept the award. We keep a waiting list of the students who are a little bit further down, because there are always some students who are in that top 60 and would normally qualify for a USRA award, and maybe they've decided to move universities, or they've decided that they need more money and they're going to go work for the Department of Highways for the summer and hold a sign and make more money. And these sorts of things will happen. And so, but we always have more applications, good applications. It's very, very difficult sometimes to tell the difference between one person and another. And so if you're awarded an NSERC USRA, you're an awesome student. If you're even applying with the faculty and they think you're good enough to apply for an NSERC USRA, you are an awesome student. So let me just be clear on that. We don't know our USask allocation for 2023. They're actually not going to tell us until January, which is interesting. So for other universities that have a different process, they can't even start their process until probably February. So they're going to be really, really behind. Because we have a centralized process, we can still do our same timeline. So we're quite happy with that. Okay, so I wanted to walk you through the mechanics of this and how it works, because I never want to assume that everybody knows. Over the past couple of years, there have been some changes to the USRA. Number one, it is a job. At the University of Saskatchewan, it is considered a job, not an award. You're not going to get like one big chunk of money. It's employment with deductions, but also with benefits. Right? So if you work for the summer and you've worked, maybe in another job or whatever, and you happen to, need unemployment insurance in the future, you'll be able to access that because you're going to be paying it this summer. The provincial minimum wage in Saskatchewan is $13 an hour. Most faculty pay more. I encourage you as a student to try and negotiate that if you can. You might not be able to, but it's always a good skill to learn, is to negotiate salary. It has to align with the provincial minimum, and of course that's the USask minimum as well. They are 16 weeks long, and that's full-time work. So, but what your hours will look like within that full-time 37.5 to 40 hours, it'll depend on the nature of the position. Some of you might be out in the field doing field research, which means you might have 12-hour days and you get Friday off, or you don't go to work on the days where it's raining because you need to be out doing plot work in agriculture. Or let's say that you're looking after animals and you need to come in the evening and actually feed them and come back in on the weekend and feed them. It just depends on the nature of the lab or the research project that you join as to how those hours kind of flow throughout the week. Faculty need to be eligible to hold NSERC funding, which means that would be where they would normally apply to hold funding. It used to be the rule that they had to actually have an active grant. That is no longer the rule. So yeah, they do not need to have an existing or active grant. Student eligibility, and this is the big cutoff. These are federal rules. I cannot bend them. I cannot change them. You must be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or a protected person, such as under the refugee status in Canada. Because we have so many applications from very high-profile students, generally your average needs to be 75% and up. NSERC requires a B-, which will be, there is some wiggle room between 70 and 75. So if your average is between 70 and 75, and there's a reason why you're sitting at that average, there is some potential that we can take that into account. You have to be registered in a bachelor's degree. It can be your second bachelor's degree, that's fine, but you can't have started graduate studies at all, and you cannot be registered in a professional program such as medicine or nursing, a professional program in the health sciences. So yes, so I just said this. If you have a bachelor's degree and you're studying towards a second, yes, you can still apply. You can only hold one per fiscal year, but here at USask, we only offer them in the summer. Because we have 145 applicants normally, believe me, we'll fill those 60 spots easily. We do have students who have held a USRA more than once, that they've won them more than once. You can only hold up to a maximum of 3 throughout your whole undergraduate career. So keep that in mind. There are some rules against ineligibility. You're not eligible to apply, again, if you're in a professional degree program in the health sciences, so dentistry, medicine, nursing, that kind of thing. If you have started a program in graduate studies in the natural sciences and engineering at any time, so if you've got a master's degree over in one kind of discipline and you decide to come back and be an undergraduate again, I've seen people do it, and think that you can, if you hold a master's or a PhD in somewhere in the natural sciences and engineering, you cannot apply for a USRA. However, if you're like me and you're a historian, and then I randomly come back and say, I'm going to take chemistry and I'm going to be in Dr. Stevens' lab and go and do things, I can actually do that. I'm not going to, but I could. If you've completed all your degree requirements and are no longer registered in a bachelor's degree program when you apply, just to keep in mind, there's some wiggle room here. If you are going to graduate in June, you can hold a USRA for the summer after you graduate, but only for the summer, and priority is given to students who are entering graduate school, and that comes from NSERC. And international students, as I said, unless you are a permanent resident or fall under a protected status, such as refugee, you cannot apply. If you do not have a faculty supervisor yet, you can watch our video on how to approach a professor for a research position. And if that works for you and you come up with a professor who's willing to work with you and put together an application, then you will work with your supervisor to develop a project that fits an NSERC criteria. We're not gonna watch that video right now. All right, so application procedures. If you have a professor, you've worked together, you've got form 2021, that's the student side of the form. Form 202.2, that's the professor's side of this form. All applications are submitted to the NSERC main portal. When you go to the NSERC main portal, if you've never applied for an NSERC USRA before or anything to NSERC, you have to create your online system login. It's going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, including questions around your identity. Please fill those out. Even though it says that it's optional, it's not optional if you're an Indigenous student, and it's not optional if you are a student of Black heritage, and I will get to that in a moment. Both the student and the supervisor have to have a login and submit. The student has to do theirs first because it's going to kick out a code, and then the professor uses that code when they put theirs into the system, and then the two get matched together so that when it comes to me, they're pre-matched, which is very fun. Yeah, so that's the Form 202 Part 1, that's the student's form. Form 202 Part 2, that's the professor's form. You do need to have your transcripts. Here at USask, we have a new system. This will be the first year that we try this, but the University of Saskatchewan has a new system that they've partnered with a group called MyCreds. In theory, fingers crossed, the MyCreds system is digital and it's automatic. So the minute you've got final exam, everything is all listed in pause, we are going to be able to get your official transcript from MyCreds. So early in January, about January 5th or so, give it a try and see what happens. What you'll have to do though, because we need the PDF of it, and I'm going to break this down a little bit better next week, but what you'll have to do is that there's a video on MyCreds that tells you how to do that, but you'll essentially going to be emailing a copy of your transcript to yourself, and then you'll have a PDF copy of it that you can then use for all kinds of purposes, including uploading to NSERC. We have added something new for 2023. This has not been a requirement before, but it is a requirement this year. And that is a one-page, up to maximum one-page, student statement of research interest. It has to be emailed, so it doesn't get uploaded to NSERC. It gets emailed to the undergraduate.research@usask.ca on the same day by the deadline, which by the way is January 17th, and I'll get to that. The reason for this new piece is because we have, as I told you, that centralized process of adjudication. So we have professors from all across the university who have agreed to be on this committee. They read all of those applications. And what they've identified is that because we have a centralized process, they don't necessarily know you as a student. They don't know your research potential. They don't know why you're interested in research. They don't know nearly enough about you. And so we, in response to the request from our adjudication committee, we checked all the other universities across Canada who also have a centralized process. They also have something very similar in place, whether it's a student statement of interest. Some of them do interviews, some of them do have you upload a CV. They all have something different, but universities of our size, they ask for a one-page student statement of interest. So we are putting this in place. It has to be there by email to undergraduate research on the same day that you upload everything to NSERC, or by that deadline, which is January 17th, 2023, which I think is a Tuesday, if I recall. I'll get everything all organized on the back end. That's my job and my office's job. And then I will send everything out to the selection committee. They will read through all those applications. And like I said, each application will be read by 2 faculty members. They will select according to our USask allocation and then a wait list. We hope to have the adjudication process done by the end of February, if not just a touch earlier, and notify everyone by the end of February. This was the second request that was put forward and has regularly been put forward here at USask, is to make this process faster, because we've lost really good students because they couldn't wait any longer to hear if they had a summer job. And so we've tried to move up the process. The one sticking point that we had was transcripts. But as soon as we went to MyCreds, we could move that up by 2 weeks and see if we can try it. So this is our intention. We're not doing it for random reasons. We're doing it for very good reasons at the request of faculty across the campus. And then if you are one of the ones who win one, the projects will run May through August 2023. So again, on transcripts, just to say, yes, this is something that you will need to do. It will cost you $10, I think, is the cost. So you need to purchase credits in this new system. It's called MyCreds. And then you'll be able to order your official transcript. And like I said, they'll have, I'll send you guys more specific step-by-step information, but it should be ready about 5 days after your exams are done. You email the transcripts to yourself in PDF form because you need it in PDF form to upload to the NSERC portal. Now, for those of you who have transcripts from more than one university, it is going to be your job to make sure that you put all those transcripts into one PDF. You can't upload 2 and 3 PDFs. You only get room to upload one. So find a friend if you don't have something that can mash PDFs together, and get all your transcripts together in one PDF before you upload it to NSERC. The student statement of interest, for those of you who may not know, I am going to be running a session this coming Monday, November 28th, and I believe it's at 11:30. To kind of break down the student statement of interest. I will be recording that session. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. As I said, that's new. The why is because the adjudications at the university level, they need more information about you as a student. This is to your advantage as a student to tell them about yourself, what you're interested in terms of research. We've based our criteria on what this page could look like. So the criteria from NSERC and the 3 things that NSERC looks at is your academic excellence, so that's your transcripts, right? So you're already going to have that. Your research potential, and the third is the expected quality of the training, so the research project and the mentorship that you're going to receive. Well, the faculty cover that in their part of the application, but the student part of the application was really sparse. And it didn't give enough information. That's why we've added the 1-page statement of interest so that you guys can talk about your research potential, so that students can talk about why they want to do a research project, why you want to do it with this faculty, how a research project is going to help you as you grow forward and grow as a student here on campus, and whatever your future goals are. So some of the things that NSERC has outlined this for us to look at. The indicators of research potential, as I said, academic training is more than just your transcripts. You can talk about particular classes that you've taken that are specific to research. You can talk about any previous research or work experience, so any co-op work that you've done, internships that you've done, because the USRA application really only has room for previous USRAs, but some of you might have had other kinds of research training or research opportunities, so that the 1-pager gives you room to talk about that. You can talk about the relevance of any work experience or academic training that you've had that you're bringing into your proposed research projects, so that's a good thing to talk about as well. Some of the other things that the adjudicators watch for, because they're all faculty members themselves who supervise undergraduate students, we watch for things like your judgment, your ability to think critically, your grit, your perseverance, your ability to apply skills and knowledge. And examples that you have of these might not necessarily come from a research class or a lab, but they could come from elsewhere in your life. And so you can talk about those sorts of things. Enthusiasm, that's a big one. It will come through. Any kind of relevant community involvement and outreach. For example, I had a student who studied in the lab a really, really scientific thing around zebrafish, but their larger goal was to help support research on Parkinson's because their grandpa had Parkinson's disease. And they were a volunteer in where their grandpa was to help all the other residents and their grandpa with Parkinson's. And so they could draw a through line between their research and their community interest. And that's something that could potentially go on your one-pager. Your initiative, your autonomy, your ability to work by yourself, your ability to work with teams, these are all things that could potentially go, are considered indicators of research potential. And obviously your research experience and achievements, but we make sure that we're paying attention that they're relative to where you're at in your academic experience. If you've just finished first year university, and this is your first time applying for an NSERC USRA, you're going to be in a slightly different place than a student who's maybe just finished third year or fourth year and applying for an NSERC USRA. And we have formulas to make sure that we're aware of that and can take that under consideration. If you're interested in coming on Monday to write your NSERC USRA statement of interest, that's the QR code to register. That goes to the Eventbrite, but it's also found on the SURE webpage. It's also found on our Eventbrite. So yeah, by all means, feel free, but we are going to be recording it. We do have some news. So if you self-identify as either Indigenous or Black, we would like you to make sure that you put that into your NSERC USRA application. New for this, so Indigenous USRAs have been in place for several years. And if you identify as an Indigenous student, your application will go forward to NSERC over and above our university's number that we get, like our allocation. New for this year, students of Black heritage will also go forward over and above our allocation, exactly the same as an Indigenous USRA application. You still have to qualify, you still have to meet all the other criteria and have, you know, a high average and all of these sorts of things, but we will be able to put forward all of our NSERC USRAs if your undergraduate student is of Black heritage or of Indigenous heritage over and above our application, or over and above our quota. So the adjudication process remains the same, including that student statement of interest, but they will all, if you meet the basic criteria, all of those applications will go forward, which means that next year we may have as many as 70 or 75 students here at the University of Saskatchewan, including our regular number of USRAs, Indigenous USRAs, and students of Black heritage. They will all go forward. So we do have a definition from NSERC of who is considered to be Indigenous person. Of course, at USask, we also have internal protocols to make sure that students who put themselves forward for these awards are actually of Indigenous descent. And so we need to make sure of that. NSERC has not yet given us the criteria for who might be considered a student of Black heritage. As soon as they do, I will try and communicate that out to everyone as quickly as I can. The third part of a NSERC USRA is what the professors put forward, and that talks about the proposed research project and student training, student role and student training. And this, so we have a session on Monday, December 5th. It's in Thorvaldsen 110. Students are very welcome, of course, but the session is intended and designed for faculty to help. That was another thing that the adjudicators last year said, is that there were a lot of applications where there was just a cut and paste from someone's discovery grant, and it didn't give us enough information about what this particular student's role would be within that larger project. And so we just want to walk some of the faculty through that and just make sure that they're aware that this is what the adjudicators are watching for, and to make sure that their student application, that they're making sure that they're supporting their student in the best way possible to be as high up on that list as they can be. All right, here's the adjudication procedures. Here's the committee. Ed Kroll, Tony Brzezini, Kristen Khan, Vishnu Achara, Azmahan Abu Arish, George Katselis, Angelica Lang, Jenny Lee Tomasson, Zadia Kobodo, and Robert LaPrairie. This is a mix of professors from across the university who regularly apply to different aspects of NSERC. There's no way that we can have a complete cross because we also want to try and have a good balance of gender. We like to have a good balance of people in different levels of their where they're at as faculty, if they're new faculty or very experienced faculty, somewhere in between. But all of them, all 10 of them volunteered. I am keeping all 10 of them because I want to keep the workload on each of them as low as possible, especially with adding in the extra 1-pager that they all have to read. They've all agreed to it. They all support it. They all think that this is the way to go. So our timelines, January 17th is the deadline for everything to be uploaded to NSERC and the email to undergraduate research with your 1-page letter of interest. I will do all the work on the back end to get all the packages ready and to the adjudicators, because I'll need to match adjudicators to students and all of that good stuff. The adjudication period, if I can get it to them before January 31st, I'm aiming to. The adjudication period is sort of that end of January to mid-February. We have the adjudication meeting already set for the week of January 13th to 17th. It's in all of the adjudicators' calendars. So we'll be there. So we will have the list and the award letters to students before February 28th. I've given myself a little bit of time in there just for hiccups, but by the 28th at the latest and earlier if at all possible. So just so you know. If you win an award, you have to follow the instructions. You'll get a letter with instructions, and you have to accept the award by a particular deadline. And then what will happen is that you'll work with your supervisor and with Connection Point to be hired. They need to create a letter of offer. You'll be hired, all of these sorts of things. You will start May 2023 for 16 weeks. If you do happen to win an award, you have to have completed all your course requirements of the first 2 years of study, first 2 academic terms. We have had students coming out of first year win an NSERC USRA coming out of their first year. But we do check and make sure that you've actually, finished and have completed those 2 terms. You need to make sure that you have an active registration in the January to April, or at least in the fall term, because maybe you're away to do an internship or a co-op for 4 months. We want to make sure that we have some flexibility for students who do that. You're still registered in your bachelor's degree. You just might not have been taking classes that term. That's the distinction. And as I said, you can't have started your program of graduate studies at any time. We do expect you to be engaged full-time in research and development activities in NSERC work during the tenure of the award. The explanation for that is you are allowed to take 1 class per term. So 1 intersession, or whatever we call it nowadays, and 1 summer session class if you want. But if that class is during the daytime when you would normally be working in the lab, you need to work that out with your professor and make up the time in some other way. I don't recommend it, but of course, we all have jobs and lives and so on and so forth. But this is specific for classes. NSERC will allow you to take up to 1 class per term, but no more than that. I've gone through the timeline. Yes, we have sent out our announcements. We are going to send out another one because we need to now be able to talk about the Black student NSERC USRA. And so I will be rewriting that letter and sending that information out. The moratorium just got released this morning, so good to go. January 17th is your big deadline. Put that in your calendars. We do ask departments to send a memo to me, actually, with your departmental recommendations and rankings. Those are also very helpful in the adjudication process. I will collate and cross-check. The adjudication will be in February, and by the last week of February, you will all be informed of your awards. And then once you've accepted and I have my final list, I send that list to NSERC May 1st. And then you guys do your projects. So here's one interesting piece of information. And for those of you who are research facilitators or faculty, you might be particularly interested in this. In addition to the NSERC USRAs for students of Black heritage, that funding that came from the federal government to support students of Black heritage, for the first time, we are also going to have a SSHRC USRA and a CIHR USRA. So students who would normally apply under those baskets we have room for one SSHRC USRA from across USask and one CIHR USRA. They will apply through the NSERC portal, which will be very weird for everybody. However, that's the way it's going to be. We're hoping that maybe we might get 2 CIHR USRAs because it's dependent on how much funding we have at the university level. They're going to prorate it. We might maybe get 2, but we definitely won't get more than one SSHRC USRA application. I have not yet processed this information out to the non-NSERC faculty, and so but feel free to talk about it if you've got friends who would normally apply in these areas, who happen to have an undergraduate student of Black heritage that wants to do some work with them, then feel free. And the OVPR will adjudicate those awards. I will not ask my NSERC committee to adjudicate a SSHRC USRA, just so you know. I have other groups lined up, but the adjudication process I anticipate will be smaller because we only have one of each, so we might get 2 or 3 applications perhaps, and then we'll adjudicate and put them forward. And I haven't put dates into place for those ones yet either, simply because there will be such a small number, I should be able to get them adjudicated quicker. So I haven't fully put in place that that's January 17th. It might still be just to keep it easier on my end, but I need some time to advertise this. Okay. I will say this. We're hoping that this is the thin end of the wedge and that both CIHR and SSHRC will now both have undergraduate student research awards, and that we'll have them all across the university available for everyone. That's what we're hoping. Okay. Now I'll take questions. Yes, go ahead. We will adjust the timing. That's the best backup plan that I can give you. If my creds doesn't work, we're going to have a huge problem here at the university level, because I don't think that university really has a backup plan for transcripts. Not that I'm aware of. Yes, go ahead. Absolutely, they do. We've had a high number. You had an NSERC last year. Yeah, Makita had one last year. And yeah, so absolutely. Go ahead. Correct. Yes. So last year we had an allocation of 60. I don't know what our allocation is going to be, but it's usually between that sort of 58 to 65. It changes depending on how much money NSERC has, how much they put forward into the pot, and how they do their allocations. But because they've had this huge hiccup and curve that's been thrown at them by the federal government around students of Black heritage, none of the universities will know their allocation until January. So if all the big universities that have a devolved process where it's like, okay, the engineering department gets 7 and physics gets 5 and computer science gets 6 or whatever, however they do their internal allocation, they can't even do that until they know their number from NSERC. So the fact that we here at USask have a centralized one, it doesn't affect us nearly as much, because I will know our allocation before we get to the adjudication process. Go ahead. Yes. Yes. So there will be, they're pretty low. So most students don't pay a whole lot of tax, simply because, you only make, under $11,000 or $12,000 a year, or, not very much. But yes, you will have to fill out a TD1 and a TD1 USask if you haven't already. And yes, they are taxable. Good questions. Okay, I'm going to see, I think there's some questions on that. Yes, Julia, go ahead. I'll see if I can hear you.
Thanks, Merle. Can you hear me okay?
I can sort of hear you. Talk loud.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks for the presentation. That's really helpful. I was wondering, since the university decided to put students into a worker category now instead of a student category, Has the issue around vacation pay and vacation time been resolved? Because 16 weeks in the summer is a long time to ask somebody to not take any vacation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So here's where we're at right now. Vacation pay is deducted, but what we've chosen to do, and this is what NSERC has suggested as a good practice, is that the time that you actually take for vacation is a conversation between the student and the supervisor. So if you need to say add another week on at some point, you know, to kind of make up the hours, then that's potentially one of the ways forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm glad that worked for you. It doesn't work for everyone, but that's how we've chosen. We just think that you guys are all adults and you can figure it out.
Yeah, as long as there's the ability to have that, well, the ability for flexibility.
It's a lot easier for us from the administrative side if you handle that, you know, same, you know, they're all in the age where their friends are getting married. They've got to go for a wedding. They've got a long planned canoe trip with their dad, whatever it is that they've got going on. Try and work it out on a student to supervisor basis.
Yep, that's perfect. Thanks, Merle.
Okay. So that was Julia's question. I did see another hand.
It's me, Asmahan.
Asmahan, go ahead.
Hi. Quick question about this CIHR USRA. Can one student apply to both NSERC and CIHR USRA, or it has to be one or the other? For two different
It would
proposals.
be very, very rare for a project to be so indistinct that you could apply in either way. I would suggest that a project, it's based on the project, Asmahan. So if the project is best defined by an NSERC, then that's where you would put it forward. If the project is best defined under CIHR guidelines, then you would apply under CIHR.
I actually specified if it's two different proposals.
Two different proposals.
Yeah, one for this and one for that. No?
I hadn't thought my way through that, but I don't see any reason not to.
Okay. And
I think that's possible, yes.
Thank you. The other thing that is not very clear to me, the departmental thing. Should we contact the department to know if there's a different deadline, like a week before January 17th?
Yeah, oftentimes the department will send around some kind of an internal notice, or just maybe you could raise it at the department level and say, you know, if we know which students, you know, just ask which faculty are putting forward an NSERC USRA, who are the students, and then rank them.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be very helpful. Thanks, Asmahan. I hadn't thought through that question of yes, go ahead. No, so we will need your transcripts in early January that have your fall, all your classes and your transcripts from the fall, not your winter. You won't, because you won't get that until the 1st of May, right? You know, and so yeah, it'll be your fall ones, which you should be able to get them by about the 5th to the 10th of January. How are we doing? You guys ask really good questions. I think we're good. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. If you have more questions and that occurred to you as you're sleeping tonight or whatever, send me an email to undergraduate.research@usask.ca. Thanks, everyone.